tumbled. It was another ugly day for Tokyo, down 9.6%. You know, Tokyo is seen as a leading indicator sometimes of global economic health, and so that's telling you that investors, I mean, this is an economy that isn't exposed so much to credit as we are here in the U.S., but it still is down almost 10%. Australia down sharply, even though that economy also has been doing well because of commodities. Hong Kong down 7.2%, Shanghai down 3.6%. This all started really here yesterday when the United States had a horrific performance for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. John said it fell off a cliff. That's exactly right, down 678 points, now just below 8,600. The NASDAQ had a horrible day too, and the S&P 500 as well. That's a 7% loss for the Dow, almost 8% loss for the S&P 500. And year to date, the damage report is not, it's not pretty. The Dow down 35% so far this year, the NASDAQ down 38% this year, the S&P 500 down 38% year. This is a significant loss in value, in market capitalization, in a significant loss in retirement portfolios. Some $2 trillion at least now has been lost in the past year out of retirement portfolios. The question is, what do you do now? And over and over again, experts say that there's a good old adage when the market is just in the grips of fear like that, and that is, don't just do something, stand there, because now you're going to make a mistake.
Dow futures down 227 points. So typically, in the past, if we've seen a drop in the Dow, the Asian and the overseas markets will follow, but this keeps going around in a circle.
That's absolutely right, feeding on itself and feeding on itself. And one of the things we're going to hear from the president later today, we know that the European Central Bank is injecting liquidity into the system as well. They've done so many things to try to restore confidence and restore some oxygen back into that credit market. And we haven't, you know, yesterday the indicators we watched for the credit market were showing that it hadn't thawed at all. So we're just waiting to see when those first cracks start to develop in the credit market.
I'm not sure if this is inside baseball or not, but I'm curious as to whether this had an effect yesterday. The SEC had temporarily put a ban on short selling for a number of stocks. That was lifted yesterday afternoon. Is that a reason why we saw that plunge?
I'm not sure, because that whole time that the SEC had the ban on short selling, the Dow lost 1,000 points. So I'm not sure what effect, if any, that had on things at all.
There was some thought that maybe lifting the ban would actually decrease the volatility, but
who knows? There's so many different moving parts here. I'm not sure that any one moving part is what's going to do it. One thing that a lot of people are talking about, many Americans waking up and saying, wait, we passed a $700 billion bailout bill. I thought this was going to at least stem the bleeding, if not fix things. And remember, all along we've been saying the hope is that this is something that's going to prevent some kind of a catastrophe, but we just don't know what the impact's going to be.
Well, it's been passed, but we haven't seen it in action yet either.
Absolutely right.
The Treasury.
That's absolutely. And some of these other things, their business loan bailouts, they haven't actually started yet.
Yesterday, on the Situation Room, I was filling in for Wolf, we talked with Edward Lazier, who is the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, otherwise known as the president's right-hand man on the economy.
Right.
He said this is going to take some time. It can't be measured in a period of days. It's probably going, and it won't be measured in months either until this thing kicks in, but it will be a matter of weeks before they get all the pieces in place. But do we have weeks? Where are we going to be weeks from now by the time this kicks in?
And I suppose that's what the president's going to hammer on today, this morning. He's going to say, you know, we have to have some patience. You can't buy patience. And you can't buy patience, especially in the markets. Do we have weeks? I don't know. Do we have any other choice? I don't know about that either. One thing that I think is really interesting is that so much of our life has been built on credit, both business life, personal life, our country.
You have to wonder, do we really need to change our behavior?
Are we seeing an unraveling of the way things have been built up over the past 20 years or something, and is there a fundamental change happening? We're not going to know. I mean, that's going to be for
They're also meeting at the White House, and this is a highly unusual meeting that's happening tomorrow, where foreign ministers, financial ministers from countries around the world are meeting
G7, IMF,
to exchange ideas. I mean, this is where we're at right now as we try to figure this out.
We're talking about a global recapitalization of the banking system. I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing to think of. When we're talking about actual injections of capital into banks from governments, this is big stuff.
Christine, stick around. Lots to talk about this morning. Thanks.
Yeah, and we're going to find out what it's like across the pond right now. As we mentioned, trading on the Vienna exchange suspended after stocks nosedived at the opening bell, falling 10%. CNN's Richard Quest is watching developments on the European markets for us. He's live in London, where it's no better than it is here, is it, Richard?
I bring you no good news from this side of the Atlantic this morning, I'm afraid, Christine and Karen. Christine's spot on. We're looking at a complete massive recapitalization of the world's banks needed, and so far that hasn't happened. As a result, when they arrived and they rang the opening bells across Europe, all the major markets were lower. The FTSE in London down 10%. The DAX in Frankfurt down about 10%. Same for the CAC 40. Russia, well, we can forget about Russia. Their markets have closed because it's all so horrible, the news from there. Just about now, I was looking at the numbers a second or two ago. Karen, London's just off about 6.5%. Similar numbers across the rest of Europe. Substantially, the reason is there's no confidence, no buyers, and everyone's waiting to see who's going to put their toe in the water first.
Richard Quest for us from London. Thank you.
Let's go down to